The first thing I noticed was the silence, not the peaceful kind, the wrong kind, the kind that makes your stomach drop before your brain can catch up. I was still smiling, holding a box of lemon pastries in one hand and my spare key in the other, when I stepped inside and saw my parents lying on the kitchen floor, perfectly still, like someone had pressed pause on their lives. My mom's hand was inches from a glass of water tipped on its side, the liquid slowly spreading across the tile. My dad's eyes were half open, unfocused, like he'd been trying to say something and never got the chance. 10 days later, my husband would look at me and say 7 words that made my entire body go cold. But in that moment, I didn't know any of that yet. I just knew something was terribly, impossibly wrong. Before I tell you what happened next, take a moment to like and subscribe, but only if this story truly resonates with you, and drop your city or country along with your local time in the comments. I always read them, and it reminds me how far these stories travel. My name is Emily Carter. I'm 29 years old, and this is the day my family stopped being what I thought it was. Let me take you back to the beginning, to the version of home I believed in before everything broke. Growing up in our house in suburban Ohio, things looked normal from the outside. 2-story home, trimmed hedges, the same American flag my dad replaced every 4th of July without fail. My mother, Linda, was the kind of woman who kept everything spotless, not just the house but the image of our family. My father, Robert, believed in order, in control, in knowing exactly where everything and everyone stood. And me, I learned early that my role was simple. Don't make waves, don't ask questions. Smile when everything feels off. That was the unspoken rule. We weren't the kind of family that yelled, we were the kind that went quiet. The kind where tension sat at the dinner table like an extra guest nobody acknowledged. If something was wrong, it wasn't discussed. It was folded, tucked away, and locked behind polite conversations and careful smiles. I remember being 12, standing in the hallway while my parents argued in the kitchen in low voices, the kind that cut sharper because they weren't raised. I couldn't hear the words, but I remember the tone, controlled, measured. Dangerous in a way that didn't leave bruises, but left something else. Something heavier. That was the pattern. Everything looked fine until you paid attention. As I got older, I started noticing things I hadn't before. The way my dad handled all the finances, never letting my mom see more than she needed to. The way my mom would pause before answering simple questions, like she was calculating the safest version of the truth. The way certain topics just disappeared mid-conversation. Money, old friends, family members we no longer spoke to without explanation. It was like parts of our life were quietly erased, and we were expected not to notice the gaps, and I didn't. Not really. I went to college, moved out, built my own life, married Daniel Steady, observant Daniel, who noticed things I had learned to ignore. He used to say, "Your family doesn't fight, Emily. They hide." I would laugh it off. Tell him he was overthinking. Tell him not everything had to be a problem, because admitting he might be right meant admitting something was wrong, and I wasn't ready for that. Not then. The morning I drove back to my parents' house, I wasn't expecting anything unusual. It was a Tuesday. Clear sky, mid-70s, the kind of day that makes everything feel normal by default. I had taken the day off work, picked up my mom's favorite pastries from a bakery 20 minutes out of my way, and planned to surprise them. No reason, just because. I remember thinking how nice it would be, how simple. That was the last normal thought I had. Because the second I stepped inside, the house didn't feel like home. It felt wrong. And within seconds, I understood why. I do not remember dropping the box of pastries, but I must have, because later I found it crushed near the doorway, lemon filling smeared across the floor like something that did not belong there. What I do remember is the sound my voice made when I said my mother's name. It did not sound like me. It sounded small. I moved first to my dad because he was closer, kneeling beside him, my hands hovering for a second before I forced myself to touch his shoulder. It was warm, not cold, not gone, just still. "Dad," I said again, louder this time. No response. My heart started pounding so hard it felt like it was in my throat. I reached for my phone, my fingers slipping once before I managed to dial 911. The operator's voice was calm, steady, asking questions I could barely process. Are they breathing? Are they responsive? How long have they been like this? I kept saying I did not know. I had just walked in. I had just gotten there. Everything felt too fast and too slow at the same time. I checked my mom next. Her pulse was there, faint but present, her skin pale in a way I had never seen before. The glass near her hand caught my attention again. It had rolled slightly, leaving a thin trail of water across the tile. I remember thinking, absurdly, that she would hate the mess, that she would not let something like that sit for more than a second. That thought hit me harder than anything else. Because she was not moving. She was not fixing it. She was not doing anything. The sirens came within minutes, though it felt like an hour. 2 paramedics rushed in, followed by another, their movements quick and practiced. They asked me to step back, and I did, pressing myself against the wall as they checked vitals, spoke in short-clipped phrases, attached monitors. One of them looked at me and asked if there was any medication in the house, any history, any recent illness. I shook my head. No, nothing like this. Never like this. They loaded my parents onto stretchers, wheeling them out through the front door I had walked through just minutes earlier with a smile on my face. I followed in my car, hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white, my mind replaying the image over and over. The floor, the glass, their stillness. At the hospital, everything blurred into fluorescent lights and waiting room chairs and the constant hum of machines I could not see but could feel. A doctor finally approached me after what felt like forever. He was careful with his words, too careful. "They are stable," he said first, like that was supposed to anchor me. "But we believe this was not accidental." I stared at him. "What do you mean?" He hesitated just long enough for my stomach to drop again. "We are running tests, but there are indications of a toxic substance. Possible poisoning." The word did not make sense at first. It felt out of place, like it belonged in a movie, not in my life, not in my family's kitchen. "No," I said immediately, shaking my head. "That is not possible. There was no one else in the house." He did not argue. He just nodded slightly, like he had heard that before. "We will know more soon." But I already knew one thing. This was not random, because nothing in my parents' world was ever random. As I sat there, staring at the blank wall across from me, my phone buzzed in my hand. Daniel. I had not even realized I had not called him yet. I answered, my voice barely holding together as I told him what happened. There was a pause on the other end, longer than it should have been. Not shock, not confusion. Something else. "Emily," he said quietly, his tone shifting into something I had never heard before, something careful, measured. "Did anything seem off when you got there?" I looked down at my hands, at the faint, sticky residue of lemon filling still on my fingers. "Everything," I whispered, and for the first time, a thought slipped in that I could not push away. If this was not an accident, then it was intentional. And if it was intentional, then someone had been in that house. Or worse, someone had been expected. I did not sleep that night, not really. I sat in a stiff hospital chair, staring through the glass at 2 separate rooms, 2 separate machines, 2 people who had always seemed untouchable now reduced to numbers on a monitor. My mother's room was quieter, her chest rising and falling in a slow, mechanical rhythm. My father's was louder, more erratic, the steady beep of the heart monitor filling the silence in a way that made it impossible to think. Or maybe it made it impossible not to. Doctors came in and out, each one saying a variation of the same thing. Stable, but not awake. Responsive to stimuli, but not conscious. "We are monitoring closely. We are running more tests. Always more tests. Always no answers." By the second day, the word poison was no longer a possibility. It was a certainty. A specialist explained it carefully, pointing to charts and lab results I barely understood. A toxic substance had entered their system, not something accidental, not something you confuse with medication, something deliberate. I remember asking the same question 3 times. How? Each time, the answer was the same. "We do not know yet." That became the phrase I hated most. "We do not know yet." Because I needed to know. I needed something to hold on to. The police came later that afternoon. 2 officers, calm, polite, asking questions in voices that were almost too gentle. "When was the last time you spoke to them? Did they have any enemies? Any recent conflicts? Anyone with access to the house. I answered everything I could, which was almost nothing. My parents did not have enemies. They did not argue with people. They controlled things. They managed things. They kept everything contained. That was the problem. I realized it as I spoke. I did not actually know their lives. Not really. I knew the version they showed me. The clean version. The safe version. The version that made everything look fine. One of the officers asked if anything seemed out of place when I arrived. I hesitated. The image of the kitchen flashed in my mind again. The glass, the water, the silence. No, I said at first. Then I stopped. Because that was not entirely true. Actually, everything felt off. I corrected, my voice quieter now. They exchanged a look. Subtle but there. Not surprise. Recognition. Like that answer, fit something they already suspected. After they left, Daniel arrived. He moved quickly, crossing the waiting room in long steps, his eyes scanning everything before landing on me. The second he reached me, he pulled me into a tight embrace, one hand pressing gently against the back of my head. "I am here," he said, his voice low, steady. I nodded against his chest, but something in me stayed tense, because even in that moment, something felt different. Not wrong, just sharper, more focused. He did not ask the same questions everyone else had asked. He did not say this does not make sense. Instead, he pulled back slightly, looking at me with an intensity that made my stomach tighten. "Walk me through it," he said. So I did. Every detail, from the moment I stepped inside to the moment the paramedics took them away. He listened without interrupting, his expression unreadable, his mind clearly moving faster than his words. When I mentioned the glass, his eyes flickered, just for a second. Small, almost nothing. But I saw it. "The glass was on the floor?" he asked. "Yeah," I said. "It looked like my mom dropped it." He nodded slowly, then asked another question that caught me off guard. "Was it her glass?" I frowned. "What do you mean?" "The one she usually uses. Same spot, same cabinet." I blinked, confused. "I do not know. I did not check." He held my gaze for a moment longer, then leaned back slightly, exhaling through his nose. "Okay," he said, but it did not sound like okay. It sounded like he had just filed something away. That was the first moment I felt it. Not fear, not yet. Something colder, because Daniel was not reacting like this was random. He was reacting like it was a puzzle. And puzzles have answers, even the ones you wish they did not. By the third day, the hospital started to feel less like a place of urgency and more like a place of waiting. The same fluorescent lights, the same muted conversations, the same updates that said everything and nothing at the same time. Stable, no change. Monitoring continues. I learned the rhythm of it quickly. The way nurses checked vitals every few hours, the way doctors avoided definitive statements, the way time stretched when you had no answers. Daniel stayed with me most of that time, but not always in the way I expected. He was present, but distant in a way that was hard to explain. He would sit beside me, quiet, his eyes not on my parents but on his phone, on notes, on something he was piecing together without saying it out loud. At first, I told myself he was just coping differently, that everyone handles stress in their own way. But the longer it went on, the harder that explanation became to believe. On the fourth day, he left early in the morning without waking me. I noticed because his chair was empty when I opened my eyes, the indentation in the cushion already gone. No message, no note, just gone. When he came back hours later, he looked different. Not tired, focused, like he had found something. "Where were you?" I asked, trying to keep my voice neutral. "At the house," he said simply. My stomach tightened. "Why?" He hesitated for just a second. "I wanted to see it myself." That answer should have been enough. It was not. "And?" I pressed. He sat down across from me, leaning forward slightly, his hands clasped together. "Emily, when you walked in, the door was locked?" I nodded. "Yeah, I used my key." "No signs of forced entry?" "No." He nodded slowly, like that confirmed something. Then he asked another question. "Do your parents usually drink water from glasses or bottles?" I blinked, thrown again by the specificity. "Glasses," I said. "Always glasses. My mom hates plastic bottles." He exhaled softly, almost under his breath. "Okay, That word again, okay. But nothing about this felt okay. Daniel, I said, my voice sharper now, what are you not telling me? He looked at me then, really looked, like he was weighing something, deciding something. I am not sure yet, he said finally. I need more time. That answer landed heavier than any of the others, because it meant there was something to tell, something he was not ready to say. The next day, I went back to the house alone. I do not know why. Maybe I needed to see it again. Maybe I needed to prove to myself that it was still just a place, just walls and furniture and memories. Not something else, not something darker. The moment I stepped inside, the silence hit me again. It was cleaner now. The floor had been wiped. The glass was gone. Everything looked normal. Too normal. Like nothing had happened at all. I walked slowly into the kitchen, my eyes scanning every surface, every detail. The counter, the sink, the cabinets, everything in its place. Except for one thing. The cabinet above the sink was slightly open. Just a few inches. That might not sound like much, but my mother never left cabinets open. Never. I stepped closer, reaching up to pull it open fully. Inside were rows of identical glasses, lined up perfectly, except one was missing. A single empty space among the uniform arrangement. My chest tightened. I do not know why that detail mattered so much, but it did, because it meant something had been moved, something had been taken. I turned slowly, looking around the kitchen again, this time with a different feeling settling in. Not confusion, not denial, something sharper, something colder, because this did not look like chaos. It looked like control, and control meant intention. I pulled out my phone and called Daniel. He answered on the second ring. I am at the house, I said without preamble. There was a pause. Not long, but enough. Do not touch anything, he said, his voice lower than before, more urgent. I froze, my hand still resting on the cabinet door. Daniel, I whispered, what is going on? Another pause. Longer this time. Then he said something that made the air in the room feel suddenly thinner. Emily, your parents changed something recently, and I think it is the reason this happened. My grip tightened on the edge of the cabinet. Changed what? I asked. He did not answer right away. And in that silence, something inside me shifted, because I realized, for the first time, that whatever truth was coming, it was not going to be simple, and it was not going to be kind. I stayed in that kitchen longer than I should have, staring at that single empty space in the cabinet like it was trying to tell me something I could not quite hear. The rest of the glasses sat there untouched, identical, perfectly aligned, exactly how my mother always kept them, except for one, just one missing. That detail followed me out of the house and all the way back to the hospital, replaying in my head over and over again like a question I did not know how to answer. When I found Daniel, he was not in the waiting area. He was down the hall, speaking quietly with someone I did not recognize. A man in a gray suit, holding a folder, nodding as Daniel spoke. The conversation stopped the second Daniel saw me. Too fast, too controlled. The man gave me a polite, almost rehearsed smile before walking away without introducing himself. I watched him go, then turned back to Daniel. Who was that? I asked. Daniel did not hesitate, but he did not answer directly either. Someone helping me understand a few things, he said. My stomach tightened again. What things? He glanced around, then gently guided me toward an empty corner of the hallway, away from the nurse's station, away from anyone who might overhear. That alone was enough to make my chest feel heavier. Emily, he said, lowering his voice, I need you to listen carefully. The way he said it made everything inside me go still. Your parents made a change about 2 weeks ago. I frowned. What kind of change? He exhaled slowly, like he was choosing each word before letting it out. Financial, legal, something significant. My mind struggled to catch up. I do not understand. What does that have to do with this? He held my gaze, steady, unflinching. Everything, he said. That word landed harder than I expected. Everything. Not something, not maybe. Everything. Daniel, I said, my voice barely above a whisper now. Just tell me. He hesitated, just for a second, but it was enough. They updated their estate documents, he said finally. Transferred assets. Changed beneficiaries. I blinked, trying to process what he was saying. It felt distant, Irrelevant. Okay, and? He did not look away. And you are now the primary beneficiary. The hallway seemed to tilt slightly. What? I said, the word coming out sharper than I intended. That does not make any sense. They would have told me. But even as I said it, something inside me knew that was not true. My parents did not explain things. They decided them. Quietly. Completely. They did not tell anyone, Daniel said. That is the point. My hands felt cold. Why would they do that? He did not answer right away. Instead, he reached into his jacket and pulled out a folded document, handing it to me. I hesitated before taking it, my fingers trembling slightly as I unfolded the paper. Names, dates, signatures, legal language I could barely follow, but one line stood out clearly, my name, positioned where it should not have been, positioned where it meant everything. I stared at it, my mind racing, trying to connect something that refused to connect. This does not explain anything, I said, my voice unsteady now. It makes it worse. Daniel nodded slowly. I know. Silence stretched between us for a moment, heavy and suffocating. Then he said something that made my heart stop for just a second. Emily, whoever did this would have known about that change. I looked up at him, confusion turning into something sharper. How? I asked. Those documents are private. They are, he said, unless someone had access, or was told. The implication settled in slowly, like a weight I could not push away. Someone knew. Someone outside of my parents. Or worse, someone close. I shook my head, instinctively rejecting it. No, I said quickly. No, that is not possible. There is no one. But even as the words left my mouth, they felt hollow, because for the first time, I was starting to see the gaps. The things I had ignored, the things I had not questioned, and Daniel was not done. I could see it in his face, the way he was holding back, measuring how much to say. There is something else, he added quietly. My chest tightened. What? I asked. He looked at me, his expression unreadable, his voice lower than before. The timing does not line up. What do you mean? He took a slow breath. Emily, if someone wanted your parents gone because of that change. He paused, just long enough for the thought to begin forming on its own. Then why did it happen on the exact day you decided to visit? The question hung there, unanswered, but louder than anything else he had said. And in that moment, something inside me shifted again, because that was not coincidence. That was not random. That was precise, and precision meant planning, which meant this was never just about my parents. Not really. 10 days later, the house no longer felt like the place I grew up in. It felt like a question I had finally answered, even if I did not like the truth. My parents survived. Slowly, quietly, they came back to consciousness, one at a time, their voices weak but present, their eyes filled with something I had never seen before. Not control, not certainty, fear. The doctors said they would recover physically, but something in all of us had shifted in a way that could not be undone. The investigation moved forward, but the truth that mattered most had already settled in. It was never random. It was never about them. The glass on the counter had been meant for me. The timing was not coincidence. It was calculation. Someone knew I would be there that day. Someone knew my routine, my habits, the small, predictable details of my life that I had never thought twice about. And that realization changed everything. Not in a dramatic way, not all at once, but in the quiet, steady way that real change happens. I stopped ignoring the things that felt off. I stopped explaining away discomfort just to keep the peace. I started asking questions, even when the answers were complicated, even when they were uncomfortable. Because what I learned from all of this is that safety is not just about where you are. It is about what you are willing to see. It is about what you refuse to overlook. For so long, I believed that keeping things calm meant everything was okay. But calm can hide a lot. Silence can hide even more. And sometimes, the most dangerous thing is not what is obvious. It is what you have been trained not to notice. If you are listening to this and something in your life feels off, even just a little, I want you to trust that feeling. You do not have to explain it. You do not have to justify it. You just have to listen to it. Because you deserve to feel safe in your own life, not just comfortable. You deserve clarity, not confusion. And you deserve to be the one who decides what you accept and what you walk away from. Thank you for staying with me through this story. Truly. Wherever you are, whatever time it is for you right now, I hope you know that you are not alone in what you feel. And if this story spoke to something in your heart, I would love to hear from you. What is one moment in your life when you realized something was not what it seemed? And if this story resonated with you, only in that case, you can like and subscribe so we can keep sharing stories that matter. My name is Emily Carter. I am 29 years old, and the lesson I want to leave you with is this. Never ignore the quiet signs that something is wrong, because they are often the ones that matter most.